So this is episode 3 of the Awkward interview series. Um, I am using this series, for those who don't know, to highlight social justice warriors, people I think that are doing good work in our society and helping to influence substantive change. They come from a variety of different backgrounds, but I am trying to focus on, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and women. And today I have my friend Matt Rogers, who's also known as Politidope, on Twitter at least. That's actually an organization of his that we'll get into. So Matt, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So awkward. I only know you as awkward. Do you tell folks your real name?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
Yeah. That's to protect my family. I have a lot of enemies.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Feel that.
I mean, on that note, like, I'm sure, honestly, they're your enemies too. They just may not know that they hate you also yet,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. The invisible hand is what
right.
my friends and I call it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, actually one of the first interview I did for this series was with the DA of Portland. And he ran on like the most progressive DA platform ever and won by the greatest margin ever. And like he is being targeted, like he's getting death threats constantly. And I am as well. It's gotten
getting stoked up. Some of this is stoked up because of the president and like the hatred that he allows to just be like injected into our body politic. But then also some of it gets kind of ramped up by not good-natured Democrats. So I was working the polls last year in the 2019 in my official capacity for my state senator, who had a different preferred candidate than I. But we were working the polls, telling people to get out to vote. And there were two main DA, we call them Commonwealth attorney races. We had two big ones here last year. It was Steve Descano versus Ray Morrow, who was the incumbent, and then we had Parisa Tafty and Theo Stamos in Arlington. And you wouldn't believe how many people, I don't know if they were Republicans, I know some of them said that they were Democrats. Which one is the one that Soros is helping?
Yeah.
That stuff is real.
Yeah. And as a Jew who grew up, who experienced anti-Semitism, vitriolic anti-Semitism, it is one of the reasons that and like the history of Jewish persecution, my own experience, like these are the things that really very quickly, along with an upbringing by an activist mother, like connected me to the cause, like oppressed peoples, period. People of color who nowadays experience way worse than I do, certainly. No one would know I'm a Jew, and that, so like you can't pass like I can, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And so I hear that constantly, like you're funded by Soros, whatever. So and sometimes I just get the question, who's funding you? And I say Soros, obviously.
Good. There's no problem when Sheldon Adelson, who's also a Jew as well, they have no issue when this casino billionaire bankrolls Republican candidates. But it's so interesting. I find that Jewish people generally kind of are so much more woke than your average white person, because you guys understand, like, there's a quick drop off from like normal politicking to ovens.
Yes,
I'm putting it bluntly.
Yes, 100%. It startles me to see honestly, like any Jew voting for Trump, for example, but also like any woman or any person of color or any LGBTQ person, like all of that astonishes me. And I am going to ask you about your thoughts on Biden, because I honestly, who you end up voting for, to me, given the dire circumstances we're in, is different from what you say publicly leading up to the election.
Absolutely.
So anyone pushing for Biden, I feel the same way about.
Yep.
In my opinion, we should be pushing to make Biden a more progressive option, not telling people like me to shut up, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Um,
I totally agree.
Word. So, yeah. So last night, before we get into like more of your background and what you're doing,
Cool.
last night, from what I understand, and I have some, I have a bit of inside information, just as much as is legal to be shared with me, that a black person shot and killed a Patriot Prayer member in Portland. And this person who was shot and killed, it is believed at this point that it was in self-defense. I'm not a pacifist, and I don't believe that even if this person was not directly in harm's way, that this person should be treated the way Kyle Rittenhouse should be treated, where that white supremacist got driven by his white supremacist mother from one city to another to commit premeditated murder, whereas a person of color who almost, given that 1 in 3 black people end up in prison, and 90% of stop and frisks are of people of color, I'm going to venture a guess that this person has had some rough experiences dealing with cops and white people. So he's ostensibly out protesting because he's sick of police violence, mass incarceration, and racism and classism and policing, prosecution, and sentencing. And he sees fascists, white racists in pickup trucks with Trump and American flags, driving through protesters, spraying like bear mace at protesters out their windows while they're doing it. I can't hold him to the same kind of feelings, whether he was in immediate danger or not. So given, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on what's going on today in Portland, in Kenosha, elsewhere, and like, how do you think protests play into making change, and specifically like, peaceful protest, which, I'm constantly told, like, in the Constitution, which you keep saying you're allowed to protest, you're not allowed to loot, you're not allowed to be violent. Well, like,
That's bullshit.
yeah.
I know your regular candidate wouldn't get on here and say that, but that's bullshit. I mean, the Boston Tea Party was looting. All these great things that have happened. Protesting is so important. Voting's important. Being someone that your congressperson, your local delegate, your state senator knows how you feel about the issues, that's important. It's kind of like a stool. There are different legs to the stool. And you can't just have one leg and think you have a stool, a meaningful political interaction. So that's why my wife and I started Politidope, which you mentioned earlier, which is when we were, I've always been like a political operative since I started my professional career. And so I've always worked for candidates. Even if I had like a main boss, I would be doing like a field project or a finance project for like another person. And my wife's an account executive for a company, and she's way smarter than me, to be honest.
My wife too.
So she is really good about making sure the trains run on time and like ideation. And we decided to put it together, but we wanted it to have like nonprofit kind of like a feel to it, like a benefit, a social benefit. But we didn't want, I just can't honestly just talk about the ideas of the Republican Party without showing my partisanship. I mean, they're racist at this point, and they are racist, or racism isn't a deal breaker, which essentially means you are what you are. So we made it a benefit corporation. So we try to teach kids from 13 years old to 17 years old, like how to be part of the body politic. And that includes all of these things. So the idea that people are having bear mace sprayed at them is just they are the looters and the rioters. They are the non that your bear mace is is violence being inflicted upon people.
Yeah.
And it's being like I said, mainlined into our body politic and made okay by both the president, who makes it okay, but then our media, who talks about these things, and it's constant, like, both sidism. I understand that, Joe Biden isn't like the perfect candidate. That's why I didn't vote for him in the primary, why I jumped from my first preferred candidate to a second preferred candidate. And even after then, kind of, if I could have voted again, I would have voted for Bernie.
Right.
But it's the media always, they'll say, Trump says killing people for fun is a bad idea. Democrats dispute that. And that's how they frame the the stories. And we wonder why people are so damn stupid in this country.
Yeah. But I do think it's important to say that this country's always been racist. And the entire purpose of police and prisons is finding new methods of enslaving, essentially, primarily Black and other people of color, to profit the corporations. We have this vast military and industrial complex. The trillions of dollars that we pay in taxes that go to these two things could solve all of our problems.
Yeah.
So Trump has just like empowered the most heinous people in our society who've maybe over the last half century have been a little afraid, and like they're not afraid anymore.
It works both ways. I think it's like kind of like the allegory, like the chicken or the egg. Like, Trump couldn't exist without them.
Yeah.
He empowers them, and it's kind of like a transfer back and forth. Because if there wasn't a place for him in our politics, he wouldn't have got nominated.
All right. So let me ask you this. I had not seen this until like yesterday.
Okay.
An article in Politico from 2016 that, and this is something I should have known, I feel, but I didn't. Part of WikiLeaks, the Podesta stuff, identified through emails that Hillary Clinton and the DNC actively propped up Donald Trump. It was their policy. Yeah, see, this is crazy, right? Their policy was that they are going to show the mainstream of America just how crazy the Republicans are. So what their goal, and it wasn't just Trump, I think it was Ted Cruz and Carson as well, but primarily Trump, and their mission was to make it look like, and to tell the media, this is a real threat, focus on them. This is what the Republicans are. These lunatic fringe racists are all Republicans. And by the way, I happen to agree with that for the most part, but like they, and at the same time, the same article showed that they were actively, pushing down Bernie while they were actively propping up Trump, because they thought that by showing how horrible the Republicans were, they would steal more centrists and independents, and it backfired.
Well, that's part of why I'm running for this office. Not particularly, folks have asked me why I'm running against this person. I'm not running against this person. I know that I have ideas that are not brought to bear, are not what the leadership of our party comes to understand. And it is what you're talking about right now is exactly that. Far too many times, Democrats think we can get elected just saying we're not Republicans. The Republicans are crazy, and we got some okay ideas.
Yeah.
We got some ideas that are just consensus ideas. And oh my God, it infects every part of our politics down to the point of where we run candidates. That's something that I've been part of this year, is running candidates. And you get, people who are in the leadership of the party who cut deals with Republicans, essentially like gentlemen's agreements. If you don't run people against my guys, I won't run people against your guys. And then we all lose. Like, it's a joke. I hate it.
So, yeah, I mean, and that's crazy. Like, I guess that's not even like surprising, but I had not really even thought about that before. Like, it shouldn't, like, you should be running again. You should be running where your district is to do the right things, whether, no matter who is running or isn't running against you.
Yes.
All right. So then, so what do you think about Movement for a People's Party?
Tell me about it. I'm not aware. Maybe
Okay.
that's asinine, but I apologize.
I don't know. Okay, so there's the Working Families Party, right?
Yes.
In New York, where I live, there's
I support that.
what's
I,
that?
I
Yeah, yeah,
support families, of course.
yeah, sure, and so do I. And most of the people I would vote for in a local election tend to be um, Working Family Party and Democrats. And, that's like the intricacies of the political process that I don't even need to know about, really. And I doubt my listeners need to know about, like, why you would run on two different and whatever. Like, to me, I guess it's obvious. Like, you need to add Democrat because
Yes.
otherwise people won't vote for you, which
Yes.
is part of the problem.
Yes.
But so we both understand like what they stand for. There's the Green Party, right, which was like considered for a while, like back to Ralph Nader and probably before, like the greatest opportunity for a third party.
Yeah.
But in addition to running like this Melba Toast, like Howie Hawkins person as their person for this year to run against Trump and Biden, they have also been, it's also come to light that they're incredibly corrupt.
Yes.
And there's all kinds of problems with the way that they do their stuff. So
Shout out to Jill Stein.
I'm sorry, what?
Shout out to Jill Stein.
Yeah. And then, you have a number of different socialist parties. There's the biggest, which is the Democratic Socialists of America, but there's a million others. Okay. So Movement for a People's Party, probably compared to all of these, is relatively new. There is a guy named Nick Branagh, who I'm not really going to get into him as an individual. He may or may not have been involved at a high level or a very insignificant level with the Bernie campaign in 2016.
Okay.
That's just the subtle background. Take it for what it is. I believe that at this point, he is taking somewhat of a back seat although I could be wrong, in terms of like, being this figurehead.
Okay.
And so he started this, and for a long time, I think that was one of the complaints, that, it was all about him and like, how worthy was this person? So today, is August 30th. And at 4:00, it's 12:00 Eastern now, at 4:00 today, there's a people's convention. It's going to be streamed online. The speakers include Cornel West, Nina Turner, Marianne Williamson, Mike Gravel, a famous actor, I can't remember his name, a famous black actor. So, and then there's Isaiah, Lauren Ashcroft from New York. There's some like, my friend Ryan Knight, who goes by Proud Socialist on Twitter.
So he's taking a hard turn. I mean, I like it. He's
Okay.
more spicy these days, but he's taking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turn towards like, more populist, progressive. He's
Totally.
like, just F it,
Right. And I'll just say that like, he gets probably, I don't know if the threats against him are as dangerous as the ones that I receive, because the people who hate him the most are not literal Nazis. But the amount of hate, like the activity, the amount of stuff that he gets on a daily basis, and like like efforts to like defame and like lie about who he is are really intense. And that's because he focuses primarily to what people see on trashing Biden.
Yes.
In reality, he's not doing that. he's trying to push progressive ideas, like you said, and he's pushing progressive down ballot candidates on his show. He's also an endorser of 10 Demands for Justice, the abolitionist platform that I helped create. So I'm all for this guy, right? But you know, to me, what he experiences is a great example of this, like, this thing in this country right now. Like, for one thing, the Movement for a People's Party isn't even trying to push a candidate in 2020. They're looking to build from now until 2024 and then have a candidate as like a real potential third party option.
Good. Yeah.
But they're running this convention now, and people don't pay attention. They don't read. They don't listen. So they're all like, this is just another example of what Proud Socialist does every day. They're just pulling votes. This is trash. This is a vote for Trump. Like, everyone who's coming on, who's going to listen to this people's convention is just, you know, going to be told about how bad Biden is, and they're going to vote for Trump.
I think there was the Bernie or bust movement of 16 was hurtful. I think that kind of outright rejection of the nominee, the only person standing between us and Trump, that's dangerous. But there is nothing wrong. I think there's everything right with pushing a more aggressive, more progressive agenda. You know, the Democratic Party, which, you know, I'm a Democrat. I say that I'm running as a Democrat. I've been that since I started. But, you know, the powers that be, you know, like to think about our party as a big tent party. The problem is the damn tent only slants to the right. We don't try to bring other people in. Now we will say, oh, we had a candidate that we shitted on, you know, that you didn't give them time of the day. We didn't really listen to what they had to say. You know, Bernie and Warren and others who have pushed for, you know, Medicare for all and you know, $15 minimum wage, they have changed what was considered to be left.
Yeah.
In the Democratic Party. Now these are like mainline party positions, when 4 years ago they were considered like far to the left. And we need that in our politics, because there are people who want to drive us to the right. That's fine. That's politics. You have a tug of war. But if the left is just deserted or you know, left to their own devices to be forced to find a third party, they can, and many people will, because we know that sometimes these incrementalism isn't always bad. There are some things that we can incrementally do, like your 10 demands. I'm all for it. I'm big.
So where's your endorsement then?
It's coming. I'll send it over.
All right.
Because I understand, to the point you said on another interview, that it's a long-term vision. It's you know, we can't tomorrow do this, but we have to state what our beliefs are. And, you know, at a certain point, we won't need the police to be our substance abuse counselors, to be our mental health professionals. It will become essentially obsolete.
Yes.
But in order to do that, we'll have to do other things outside of criminal justice reform, including tax reform, and have a real decision about what the hell we're going to spend on in this country. You know, the idea that we can't afford, we have to reject that, because we afford all this other bull that we somehow figure out how to definitely spend for.
Right. That's always their question. How can we afford it? We, like you said, we can afford everything else, just not the stuff that matters to people. Like 40 million people are starving every night, you know, and then like another million people lost their jobs last week. 40 million people are, you know, in the midst of eviction. Like, we're going to have the biggest homeless crisis in this country's history. Meanwhile, the stock market's doing fine, right? So like the polarization is just ever growing. The billionaires have continued to get richer.
Yes.
So what do you think then about like the Democratic, like why? Sorry. I thought I kicked you off. Why continue to run as a Democrat? Like, what is the is there importance to you beyond just knowing that we're not at a point where a third party is viable?
I think the party can be saved. I still believe that the Democratic Party can be saved from the elitists and the white supremacists. Uh, and the party hasn't, today's Democratic Party, even as comparably progressive that it was in 1950, right?
Right.
It wasn't always this. So I kind of, its movement has shown me that it can be saved, but I don't think that it can survive a Biden loss. And I hope that people who don't support Biden don't take this soundbite to like make it viral to say, yes, we can defeat, we will defeat democracy as well. That's how strongly I feel about this election.
Okay. So pardon me for not following closely enough to have to ask this question, but even if I knew the answer, I think that probably people other than me would want to know.
Yeah.
Are you actively campaigning for Biden?
Yes.
You are.
I was Elizabeth Warren supporter, endorsed her wholeheartedly. I told people, that, Biden was the safe choice, but he was the safe choice, but the risky choice. But this election is too important. And so I'm starting out, my election won't be until 2021. So
right.
June of 2021. So all of my field efforts have been going towards, letting people know who I am and why I'm running. But at the same time, we gotta get this guy out of here.
I know. I agree with that part. So as, as a person of color, as a Black man in America, how do you resolve this? Like, I know we can't pick Bernie at this point. I know that's not an option. And actually, I'm curious if we can maybe be the next question, why, what it was about Bernie that, didn't necessarily sit with you well enough for him to be your first choice. But since that's not an option now, I totally understand how dangerous Trump is. But how do you resolve in your head pushing for someone who wrote the crime bill that created, essentially created mass incarceration, and who was a segregationist during Jim Crow, and who has pushed for decades to cut Social Security and Medicaid and all of that?
Yeah, and it's just and I think this your question comes from a good place, and it's not a cynical question at all. It's an honest question. African American voters throughout the time that we've meaningfully had a right to vote, we've always had to vote for the less racist guy. We always have had to do that.
Yeah.
Lyndon Johnson would use the N-word regularly, but he was the guy who signed the Civil Rights, the Voting Rights Act, and many things like that. So I think that we can put the pressure on him to not do that. I think his policy agenda, while good, it pisses me off sometimes. I mean, him joking about the, defund as if it's, a ridiculous idea when he's on stage talking about, let's let the states figure out what they want to do on weed. Federal funds are going towards locking people up for weed. So, I mean, this is not an endorsement of his entire proposal. It is a decision of one or the other. And that's kind of what we do with our party primary system. You fight like hell to get the guy you want. And I think that people are going to fight like hell for me in my primary. I'm taking on people think of the way people frame it. I'm running against someone who's been here for 12 years, who's in the Democratic Party establishment, who doesn't exactly, I live in one of the most liberal, so my district it's right outside of DC. So I'm 4 miles from the White House. This is a district that Hillary won by 75 to 25. The governor, they are winning in the 70s. So this is not a district that's going to flip. However, the incumbent in this district has supported some criminal justice policies that are not in line. And I don't want to make this podcast about them. So I'll just say for folks to do their own research about the 47th district. But that's just kind of the natural inclination of the party. is to go with the safe choice. And whether they can be saved from themselves is it's up in the air. If you say you don't believe that, then it's hard for me to dispute, because time and time again, we go with the milquetoastest of the milquetoast candidates we can find.
So that's interesting. So to me, it's very clear. I mean, also, for those who don't know, the main tenet, I guess, of Politidope is activating young people to be consistent voters.
Yes.
You were the president of the Young Democrats on your college campus.
Yeah.
You certainly believe in the electoral process.
Yes.
Which I'm certainly cool with. I wonder if it's a privilege for someone like me to, say that, like, we shouldn't vote for the lesser of two evils. Like, is it a privilege to, because I'm not experiencing as closely what Trump has done?
Yeah, because you don't present, and so you may end up in a bad place, just like a lot of middle class and poor white people throughout our history have. But Black people, we've always had to choose the lesser of two evils. You had to choose, the whip or the cotton, picking the cotton. And so people were picking the cotton, and it's hard I definitely get that where we are, where our politics are. And that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. But lesser of two evils is the essence of American democracy. And if we opt out, we opt in to fascism, full on.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. And Angela Davis, who is someone that I've looked up to and quote a lot as it relates to abolition and things like that, was on record on a video interview like this saying that she will vote for Biden, which was very upsetting for a lot of people who are radical like me. But I think a lot of people misunderstood what she meant. And I think that she was essentially saying what you're saying, that you don't want to vote for the Biden that you will most likely be voting for. But at this moment in time, as we continue to protest, as we continue to create things like the 10 demands and put them in front of politicians in power, and as we continue to vote for down ballot progressives, and storm Washington and have the general strike September 1st, if we don't vote Trump out, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah, and a lot of people misunderstand our democracy. We don't have a monarchy, so Biden won't essentially be a monarch, unlike what Trump is trying to do.
Yeah, right.
He will sign the bills that our Congress sends to him.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get enough AOCs in there, we get enough people who are really Ayanna Presley's, people who are really trying to make things happen, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, the squad. We're all part of the damn squad anyways, but whatever. If we get enough people to send bills to his desk, he's not going to veto a Medicare for all. He's not going to.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think he vetoes it. If it gets to his desk.
Didn't he say he would?
He said he would, but there's a difference between what you say on the campaign trail and what you'll do.
But why is he even saying that on the campaign trail when I believe it's like 80% of Americans are for Medicare for all?
Because they think that they can triangulate. His consultants told him that you may do it and everybody knows you'll do it, but you may scare off some independents. Everybody thinks that independents are always moderate, by the way. Like right, yourself, you don't call yourself a Democrat. You would be called and asked, are you, you would say you're an independent. You're not some milquetoast moderate. Like everybody thinks that those things are synonymous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is very true. Probably the majority of independents are far right or far left.
Yes.
Right. Because otherwise they would just choose one of the two middle options.
Exactly.
Right.
Ah,
So that is part of what's so frustrating, clearly to you and to me,
yes.
about the Democratic Party, is they just make one stupid choice after another. So on that note, what was it about Bernie that, okay, so why don't black people vote for Bernie, and why didn't you want to push for Bernie? And obviously the first question, I'm not asking you to speak for all black people.
Yeah,
That's just,
but yeah.
well, I do want to hear your answer to the first question, but just your take on it.
Yeah.
Not like you're responsible to explain for all of them. But then
Well, thank
for
you for
you,
understanding that.
yes, those who don't have a major problem.
Yes.
But I did want to clarify, because that might not be understood.
Yeah.
But then I do want to know about yourself individually too.
Yeah. So I think, and I'm going to be frank with you. It's kind of like Gandhi said about Christians. It's like, it's not your Christ that I have an issue with. It's the Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the vociferous kind of ugly, like bad spiritedness from a lot of folks really turned me off with him.
So is the Bernie Bros not his policies?
No, I mean,
Oh.
no, the only policy of his that I really didn't like, I don't trust him on guns. And I think that that's kind of, it shows kind of like a blinders for him.
What's your stance on guns?
I think that we should, I mean, I don't think we'll have the political will to do away with the Second Amendment, but I think that we need universal background checks. I think your firearm should only respond to you. I think when you should be signed up. That is your firearm. When you sell it, we will transfer it to you. We can trace the bullets that you've owned. I mean, we have the technology to do it. It's just the gun industry and weak-kneed politicians are not willing to push for it. I think we need an assault weapons ban. I think, but less so about the guns. I think the better way, for folks who agree with me that we can handle this is we should tax and regulate the shit out of ammunition. The people who support, call themselves Second Amendment supporters, they have one thing right. It is just an instrument. Without the ammunition, these the AKs and AR-15s, they're basically baseball bats. The ammunition for those should only be sold at shooting ranges. If you have no reason to be carrying around AR-15 rounds, up and down Glebe Road where I live. And these are just things, that's why I'm excited to be in this, because I've never heard any politician say something like that.
So, in an ideal world for me, there would be no guns, period. Cops wouldn't exist, but if they did, they wouldn't have guns. There'd be no wars. And in this country, there'd be no hunting, because I love animals. Unless you need to eat the food. Speaking of animals, I don't know if you hear the cat. Clearly, we love animals here. But I love wild ones as well. I'm against the farm industry. Anyway, I unless you're going to eat the food and this is how you survive, I don't think you should be hunting for sport. You certainly don't need a machine gun to hunt a deer.
No.
But here's my concern about the Second Amendment. And I also the only reason I bring up the Constitution when I get attacked about people protesting is because the people who are so patriotic and pro-Constitution are the ones attacking protesters. Personally, it doesn't, I'm not well, that's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
I don't really
say. It's like when you get a debate with a Christian and you're like, all right, well, this is what the scripture says.
Yes, exactly. 100%. So I don't care that it's in the Constitution. What concerns me is the amount of right-wing lunatics who have stockpiles of guns.
Yes.
So if we were to just make guns illegal, how would you, how would I be able to protect ourselves when the real revolution comes, and we, the good people who want to end oppression and love all people, are the only ones who can't defend ourselves?
That's a profound question. It's not no cut and dry, pre-prepared answer for that one.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
Honestly,
I like what you're saying though about like some ways to make it a lot harder to get guns.
yeah.
But
And then do ammunition. So like that's
right,
why.
and the end, yes,
So
and the
like you
ammunition.
guys can shoot off all your rounds out, and
Right. Do your macho,
yeah.
small penis thing at the gun range. Yeah.
And then but you don't get to take them out, and then we can essentially cut off the supply. Now they can bring the real revolution with some handguns or whatever, but
And just all the ones that I mean, like that's the thing is like the bad people are gonna find them. They're gonna find the ammunition.
Yeah.
Like there's a black market, there's a deep web. Like it's people who want to go about things in the right way that always get screwed. So I'm terrified of making guns illegal because of that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but we got to do something. We have more guns in this country than we have people, and so at a certain point, we can have a Second Amendment, but we've also got to do something.
Got to do something about the lunatics who go around shooting up schools and black churches and movie theaters, and which is in my opinion, that is more important, is fixing the underlying root causes. And this is kind of what 10 for Justice is about too, is like, instead of putting the money into cops who, more training for cops who have no interest in de-escalating or have no, don't have the background or, whatever to be to these counselors, we need to help the people. Like Kyle Rittenhouse is who he is because his parents are psychopaths. Most perpetrators of violence were victims themselves.
Yep.
So if we fix the people who are thinking they should blow up schools, then it won't matter if there are guns or not, because they won't be using them.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk quickly about, so explain to me, I want to get into your campaign, which, as you said, is in 2021. But before that, tell me from your background, like, tell me a little bit more about your upbringing. Like, how did you, like, tell me if you believe that you were radicalized, and if, or politicized. If so, what happened, what did you experience or witness that led you to this place? Like, how did you become so invested in these causes, and in particular, the electoral process and empowering people to vote? Yeah. And then how did it get you where you are today?
Well, thanks for asking the question. So I grew up in Philadelphia. So as far back as I can remember, my big sister remembers our parents being together, but I don't. So as far back as I can remember, my dad lived in West Philly. My mom lived out in the Delaware County, which is like the suburbs. Not the wealthiest of the suburbs of Philadelphia, but the suburbs. And then my dad lived in North Philly. My mom lived in a nicer suburb. So like I kind of always had like code switching was never something that I really internalized. Like it was actually a thing, but I knew
what you mean.
It was something that I always knew that I did. And I'm biracial, so but I identify as an African American because, like I said on Twitter,
you have no choice, right?
Yes. So so I got kind of into politics in 2008. Was like the first time that I knocked any doors. It was Obama. It was like kind of like a historic moment. It was like, this is cool. But then I kind of, until like the later years of his first term, I didn't really tune in. Like I had always been like, Obama was my guy. Like when he comes back up, I'll vote for him. But I wasn't like a Democrat or like an activist or anything. But I started paying attention to just how he was treated. And just, people can have policy differences, but when like Trump or in others, we're talking about the birtherism stuff. it hit home for me as an African American who sometimes is perceived as I look like a Latino, or I look like an Indian, I look like a Pakistani or Ethiopian. And so like I knew that that could be done to me. I didn't have any ideas I would want to run for office one day.
But people will treat you differently based on what they think you are.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I've been randomly searched on airplane and stuff. So
Yeah. They thought you were a terrorist. Right.
yeah. So, and then I think like throughout, like I've always been like very up to the left of center of the Democratic Party. I've always like the Washington football team name. I was like ready to get rid of that in like 2013. I'm in Virginia. These people love the racist ass name.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but then after 16, I realized the Republican Party, this is who they are. So that was my radicalization moment where there's no more playing around with these guys. These guys, this is who they are. This is what they want for us. And the Democrats have to have an equal and so often, and thanks for asking the question. I think this is important to get to. So often in our politics, this is why so many people who are going to that convention at 4:00 feel the way they feel, is because Democrats do not come to the table with our ideal policy position. We come to the table with like our compromise position already baking in the Republican bullshit. And then the Republicans bring their bullshit, water down our proposal. And if we don't water it down to like 10%, we get nothing. And then we get stuck, or we pass 25% of what we want. So our activists and the people who got us into office and the people who were pushing us to do it, they're like, this isn't even what we asked for. Yeah. And the Republicans win because they're like, okay, we handled this. We took care of this because you guys took our compromise position. And we do this on every issue.
Yep. Yep. And so that's when you decided you wanted to get involved yourself, or focus more on trying to, like when you pick a candidate you're going to help support, is like, you know, tell me about those that you've worked for. And like, is it kind of, you're willing to help any Democrat who's running, because it's also how you earn a living.
Yes.
And you know they're better than the Republican option. Yes. Or are you actively searching for people whose, you know, values and, you know, politics align with yours?
Yeah. So it's being a political staffer, just to be frank, you kind of, you know, you got to make sure you keep a roof over your head. So right. I'm not going to go and work for Philip Morris or like the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just have to, you know, you got to suck it up and work. But when I'm volunteering to try to get people who are definitely progressives to get them in there.
Right. So that's like your passion project. Yeah. And then the rest is like, you know, some people do, I don't know what, like, you know, branding for Philip Morris for a living. Yes. You at least get to push for Democrats for a living.
Yeah. And this is Virginia Democrats. Like Virginia has, the political landscape here has moved so much in the last decade plus that necessarily, and that's why you end up having candidates like myself, like we are unabashedly to the left. And that 10 years ago would have been like, oh, you're unelectable. I don't care where you are. You know, people like centrist candidates.
Yeah.
And kind of we are rejecting that now. So it's very exciting to be part of that.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I consider Virginia to be part of the South. I mean, it's the North South, but like, how did that happen? Do you think that it's kind of moved over a little bit, or at least in the Democratic Party, people like yourself have had more of an opportunity?
Because I think the hardline social agenda of Republicans kind of, we're like a huge, like Virginia's like a huge it's a small microcosm because we don't have any big cities. So it's no big cities, all suburbs, all exurbs, all rural.
Right.
Richmond is a city, but it's not like, you don't have like a
not New York
major
city.
Yeah, no, it's not even comparable. So it's a lot of like, you know, single family homes all throughout. And those people tend to be, you know, moderate-ish, lefty-ish. And so the Republicans have really done this to themselves, like saying that yeah, we're the Nazis. Like, yeah, Jews will not replace us. And so, but I think that Democrats would be wise in this moment, which is why I am ideologically where I am, because you gotta at some point deliver for them. Because at some point the Republicans will wise up and stop being the Nazis or the obvious Nazis, and they will, the luster of being like the opposition party to fascism, that wears off, and you actually have to have fixed our criminal justice system. You can't just say we decriminalized marijuana. Like, you guys had the power to stop having us getting locked up for this, and you didn't do it. And
Yeah.
Democrats have to stop failing at those opportunities.
Yes. All right. So that's a good way to close up. Tell me about your your mission for next year in the 47th district. And your criminal justice platform, which definitely stood out to me. And then you actually kept marijuana as like a separate platform unto itself. So tell me a little bit about that part of it as well.
Yeah, so I'll start with the last part. So the reason why cannabis is such a huge part of my platform is because in my day job, I've had the opportunity to be front and center on some of these conversations in work groups with the administration, the governor's administration, and with the legislators. I think it's such a huge opportunity that is so multifaceted, because it's a healthcare issue, it's a criminal justice issue, and it's an opportunity for business in this country. It's an opportunity to restore people's ability. I know we need to make sure that the people who get out, who if we're going to allow people to sell this stuff, the people who went to jail for selling this stuff should at least be given an opportunity to be in this.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really important to me that I could talk about for hours.
And that's part of the 10 demands as well. That's a huge deal. It's not enough to just decriminalize or legalize.
Yes.
Like, there's people who've been in prison. There's
Yes.
entire communities shattered because of it.
Yeah. And I'm running for this office because the current incumbent was selected for this position in 2009. We don't have term limits in Virginia, so you can run time after time after time after time.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
This is going to sound weird.
Okay.
Shit. I'll try to cut this out.
Okay.
My wife is a breeder, and my cat is like killing her kittens.
Oh my God.
Stay with me for a second.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
We're good?
Hi, we're back.
Okay. So I was just telling my friend here, why I'm running for office. I've been working in Virginia legislative politics, coming up now on my seventh year. I've worked at every level, from communications director to press secretary to finance director to field operative and activist, volunteer on my own, created an organization. Throughout all that time, I've been privy to and able to learn from a lot of great people. But at the same time, I've got some ideas that I know that don't get talked about enough. And I've got a voice that carries those ideas and obviously resonates with people to a large degree. And so I feel like in this moment, we're looking for more young people to be in elective office. We're looking for more people of color, more African Americans to be in office. And we can't just talk about it. The district that I live in, we pride ourselves on being so liberal and so progressive, but we haven't elected any African Americans to the General Assembly since 1873.
Wow. So you would be the first one in like 150 years?
Yes.
Wow. That's incredible, man.
But we pride ourselves on being so progressive. So let the t-shirts and the face masks and the Instagram posts, it's beautiful. But what are we actually going to do?
Yeah.
And so, we got a year and a half, not even a year and a half. We got about a year for folks to get to know me. I don't need folks to automatically say, yeah, Matt, I'm all in. If you do, I would love it. But, we do need to be comfortable having elections in this country. That, this district has not had a choice at all since 2009, because the Democratic primary is the election here. And we haven't had one for this district since 2009 was the year I graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and
Yeah.
that's the year the Republican governor that won that year won the state by 17 points. Tim Kaine 2 years ago won the state by 18 points. So that's a 35-point swing. So, you know, what's considered progressive and ambitious, you know, we need to find that out. And
Right.
I put that forward, and thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I think, you know, your experience of, you know, working as a strategist, at least since, you know, 2012, your, you know, you're being for a minimum wage of at least $15, union and worker rights, paid and sick and family leave, freeing nonviolent drug offenders, you know, alternatives for, you know, alternatives to incarceration for the youth, police accountability, you know, and specifically an independent police accountability board, which is something that's part of the 10 demands for justice. Also, I think you're paying, you know, you're focusing on the prisoner's right to vote, but
Yes.
not only a prisoner's right to vote, but vote in their own district.
Yes.
Since across the country, poor and people of Black and, you know, Indigenous and people of color are taken out of their districts, you know, put in prisons that are built to give jobs to other people. And then they're not allowed to vote, but for the census, they're counted in those districts, not where they were removed from.
It sounds like slavery, doesn't it?
It sure does. So, you know, while, you know, as a candidate, you couldn't possibly, like, there's no way I'd be elected to anything in this country. You know, I'm way too out there. But I also really recognize the importance of the electoral process as well. You know, I do think that unless we get to a point where revolution is the only option, there's a multi-pronged approach to, you know, making this change, and voting is one of those things. I was a huge proponent of Jason Call in Washington, who not only endorsed the 10 demands, but adopted it as his criminal justice platform.
Wow.
Obviously, Cori Bush, I was so excited about her victory. And I think that, you know, you stand on the right side of a lot of these issues. So I wish you the best of luck. And in the meantime, you know, keep helping grow these emerging young leaders at Politidope. But I think that's such a great cause, man. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Best of luck to you and your breeding operation.
We might just keep this in so people can see what my life is like. Yeah. In case I paused record before I had my meltdown, I did have to pause this interview to go save a kitten from being killed by her mom. So yeah, there's a cattery in my house. You get to know a little bit about Awkward as well.
Oh man. All right, guys. Thank you for joining, and I hope to be on another time.
Yeah, sounds good, brother. Thank you.
Bye.
Peace.